All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to today's Safeoclock Health and Safety Interactive Workshop. So, we want to do justice to this topic today. I'll just do a brief introduction on the topic, and majorly what I want us to look into is not just the electrical aspect of the topic. I want us to look into the applications, how we manage it in our workplace, how we use this electricity, and how we ensure that injuries or accident doesn't result from it. What are those major proactive measures we put in place? So these are the major things I want us to learn from each other today, not just electricity alone. We all know about electricity. We know how it functions and what happens to it, but there are some measures, especially temporary electrical connections, because let's say not finished areas, buildings or maybe infrastructures that are still under construction, how we manage those temporary electrical connections is really of interest to a lot of people, because most of the incidents that happens are as a result of poor management of electrical connections in those construction areas or the areas that are not yet permanently fixed. So let's do a bit introduction on the topic. I will look at some of the hazards of electricity. I will also talk about isolating circuits. I'll look at work on energized equipment, portable electrical tools. Then I'll summarize with work area safety when it has to do with electricity. So for anyone who has to work with electricity, the person must be authorized. So there are different organizations, there are different standards that make someone an authorized person to work on electric circuit. So this is what we should be looking out for. Should be looking out for that anyone who manages electricity or who works with live electrical components in the workplace must be authorized. He must have the adequate training required for him to work. In some organizations, they say the minimum is diploma. Some organizations will say 5 years experience. So depending on what is defined for you and for your in the standard that you are complying with. So first, working on electricity should be authorized and the person must have adequate knowledge. So the special trainings required for authorized persons could be safe work practice, isolation of electrical sources, tests and tools and PPE. So some of the hazards associated with electricity could be electrical shock, explosions, and electrical burns. And of course, we know how the degree of injury that could result from any of these electrical hazards. So let's look at some of the electrical work practices. The first one is safe work practice. Before any job starts with in electricity or around electrical energized areas, there must be first the energization, there should be lock, and there should be tag, and all the circuits should be tested. Now, all the power sources must be de-energized, and it should be disconnected from power sources. Not just that you have switched it off, but it should also be disconnected so that to prevent maybe sudden startup or those things. That is why we should disconnect it. So this is safe work practice for electricity. Control devices. Using, while working in an energized source, push buttons, selector switch, and interlock are one of the control circuit devices that can help prevent the energized source starting up again. So these control devices helps a lot. Lockout tagout, of course, we know is a procedure whereby we lock out an energized source or energy source. Tagging it out means putting a notice or an information informing someone that this energy source has been locked and has been tagged by so-so person and for so-so activity. So this is a practice that ensures adequate communication and ensures that the energy source that has been locked out is not re-energized while the activity, especially maintenance activities, or while activity is ongoing in that particular energy area. So if a lock cannot be applied, then tag is a must. But in most situations, depending on the level of energy source available, you cannot replace tag with lock. So you cannot replace a lock with a tag. So a lock is mandatory to ensure that that area cannot be re-energized until the authorized person who is carrying out the activity removes the lock and can certify that the job has been completed safely. So for release stored energy, this helps in ensuring that the tagged out equipment or the locked out equipment is safe to use by ensuring that all the stored energy has all been released and there is no residual energy available that could cause injury during activity on that line or on that circuit. So if you have de-energized an energy source, you should confirm if that energy source is dead. Dead simply means if it has entirely been de-energized, if there is no residual energy source coming out of that source. So after de-energization, after isolation, so you should do some testing using the testing equipment to ensure that the voltage and current passing through that particular circuit is entirely zero. So that is when you will confirm that circuit is dead or that electrical component is dead. So for you to ensure that you are entirely working on a deadline, then your testing equipment, your voltmeter must be accurate. You must ensure that it has, you must ensure that it's okay, and you must ensure that it's properly calibrated. So to re-energize the equipment, first of all, you must conduct tests to ensure that all the jumpers and electrical shorts and grounds has been properly removed before you re-energize. You have to also warn the people working in that around that area, and you have to also ensure that you warn other contractors or other people who are working around that area that you are about to re-energize the electric source. So in situation whereby work must be carried out on an energized equipment, so it should be properly and safely done. That particular area or that energized part where the work will be carried out should be properly isolated, which means only the authorized persons, only the people who are equipped and competent to do that job will be in that location. So when working in an energized circuit, you should ensure that the area is properly isolated from all traffic. Both vehicle and pedestrians must not have access to that work location. An attendant is necessary who will stay far and who will be like a barrier between you and the other onlookers to be able to communicate to them that an activity is going on in that location in an energized circuit. Insulated tools are very necessary to ensure that the level of electrical current exposed to is limited or is not having that much effect on the worker. Use of electrical rubber sheet to cover nearby exposed circuit is another practice to ensure that the worker doesn't touch the live conductive parts. So conductive materials must be handled safely to ensure getting in contact with them, because that is where the major hazard lies with. Touching the conductive part is where the risk of electrical circuit lies. So while working in an energized circuit, all conductive materials and enamels must be removed from the person, like jewelries, clothing, all those metal-related items should be removed from the worker. Now, electrical cords and tools. So for every activity in the workplace, most activities use power tools or electrical tools. And to ensure that they are safe, adequate and routine inspection is recommended. So for every power tools being used in the workplace, it should be properly inspected and it must be handled safely to avoid damage. Flexible electric cord connected to equipment should not be used to raise that equipment. If the equipment should be used, it should be raised on the handle and not to carry the tools on the cable. So the cables or the flexible cords should not be used to tie around that cable, around that power tools. Is going to damage it. Visual inspection is required before any power tools is used. So some people ask sometimes, do you do power tools inspections on daily basis? Yes, it's not just on daily basis, but on each use. Before each use, the power tools should be inspected by the supervisor. You can have a record that you maintain at your own specified intervals, but inspection should be pre-use, should be on each time that the power tools is used, should be inspected. Should not rely on what was inspected last time. So if the power tool shows any sign of damage, it should be removed from service. If there is any damage on the cable or on the plugs or any of the physical parts, it should be removed because that is a risk of electric shock that is nearby. Water and electricity are not so close friends. So while working in a damp area or while working in a humid area, it should be very careful with electricity. Cordless power tools or maybe chargeable power tools is recommended while working in such an environment instead of using electricity or electric connected power tools. Ladders. When using ladders during electrical activity or during electrical related activities, should ensure that the ladders in use are non-conductive in the sense that it does not have metal parts that could be an easy conductor of electricity. So while selecting ladder, ensure that you confirm the type of activity that will be ongoing. So if your test equipment or test instruments are malfunctioning, if the readings or if the values you obtain are not consistent with what it should be, then it should remove it from service, because it is also another high risk. By maybe, for instance, you want to confirm if the electric circuit that you isolated is dead, and the device or the testing equipment is giving you a wrong value. So that is a very high risk that can lead to fatality because of the wrong value from testing instruments. So you should ensure that your testing instrument is well calibrated and is safe and is accurate. So let's look at some of electrical PPE that are necessary for the electrical activity. The first one is that personal protective equipment used in electricity must be electrical rated, not just any PPE that you use for electrical activity or for energized areas. It should be electrical rated so that it will be able to protect from the risk of that exposure to the electricity. Non-conductive head protection. The helmet should be non-conductive. The hand gloves and other protective equipment should be electrically rated. PPE must be inspected regularly at intervals, and it should be checking for worn-out, should be checking for damages, and it should be checking for tears and cuts. So if the PPE has defaced, has changed color, or has changed shape, then it doesn't matter what is the validity of that PPE, it should be discarded and changed. Rubber insulating line hose are inspected type of PPE that must be inspected before use. And rubber insulating covers, when they indicate that the insulating values are below what is expected, then it should not be used. Rubber insulating blanket should be inspected before each use and should be also inspected every 12 months. Rubber insulating gloves should be inspected every 6 months and before first use. Rubber insulating sleeves should be inspected every 12 months and before the first use. Okay, so let's look at some of the actions required to work in a electrical energized area. So the first thing you should do is to ensure that the equipment you are working on, you have to know the status. You have to know if it's active or not, if it's live or it's dead. You don't just assume, and you don't assume that this equipment cannot self-start. So you do not assume, you have to verify that the equipment is live or is de-energized before any work is done. So do not work on energized electrical parts without adequate PPE, adequate illumination, and without adequate knowledge. Using insulated tools or double insulated power tools will help to reduce the risk of exposure to electricity. Because of this double insulation, will reduce the electrical current or electrical voltage emitted from that power tools onto the hand of the user. So use fuse handling equipment and do not remove fuses when those power tools or those tools are supposed to be used. So this fuse helps to control the amount of the voltage that goes across that power tools. And if the fuse are removed, then it can easily flow and it can lead to overcurrent, over voltage. So while working in any area, the nearby people should be adequately informed, because most times the person working in those energized equipment is well aware of what is going on, but the people coming in are not aware of that, the presence of electrical hazard. So there should be proper communication with signage, with barriers. So there should be proper identification of working area and people protected from coming inside that place. Using barriers to prevent or limit access to that workplace. Use signages to notify people of the activity involving electricity, and ensure that the job is done in a safe environment. Okay, so this is just an introduction to electricity, and just like I said, our major focus of discussion today will be looking at how we safely manage, especially temporary electrical connections in the workplace, because that is where the main hazard or the main risk lies. Because the permanent electrical connections is assumed that it has been done by a competent person, but those temporary ones that we do in the workplace, that is where our a major line of action or major line of focus is, because people can misuse it, people can do what they are not competent in doing, and people can also intentionally leave energize or conducting part of the electrical cable open, and people will touch it and get electrocuted. So that is it from me. Let's hear from others. Okay, so the floor is open. Let's see. Let's hear from others.
Good evening, all.
Good evening, Sir Valentine.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Bar.
Stephen.
Boss.
Happy New Year.
Wish you the same.
Okay. Back to the point which we just had now, the section which we just had now. It's important that everyone understands that electricity is a very big killer. Electricity, I've worked with electricity and live electrical conductors for about 8 years when I was doing some work for one of the Karama and the Qatar Energy contractor. It's important that for people to understand that the point which has just been highlighted by the presenter is very clear with regards to the key things to take in preventing electrical damages. There was one leaflet or flyer that I had in the past. I'm trying to get hold of it. It's called 7 Steps That Saves Life. 7 Steps of Electrical Safety That Saves Life. And all these are basically in line with what Johnson has talked about. We don't want any electrical work, no matter how small it is, being undertaken without authorization. That means a PTW having a competent person to supervise the job, having a competent electrician to do the works, having the necessary lockouts and tagouts, having the necessary testing instruments to test that there are no life walking can take place. There have been people who have trusted others, telling other people who told them that the bare conductors is isolated, is switch off, you can do the work. Never trust anyone. I had a bad experience with one of my colleagues, 2013. Unfortunately, this was in Oman. And unfortunately, that guy, he lost his life because he trusted the client at that time. The client told him that the bus bar was de-energized, and he believed him. But the rules which we had was that you need to test it with multimeter, calibrated multimeter. And this is for the bus bars, and then if you are working with more higher voltages, you use lifelines. Unfortunately, he didn't check. And when he touched it, there was a flashover. He had 70% burns and he never recovered. So electricity is a big killer. When working with electricity, please be careful. In the construction sector, we face a lot of times where people willfully or accidentally damage live electricity conductors. And to them, it is just a small damage. It's accidental. But there are chances that while having these accidental damages, you could come in contact. Not every time you see a cable, you think that the insulation is proper. There are times when there are damages to the insulator, to the insulation. So if there are damages, that means the bare conductors or the live conductors may have been exposed accidentally. If you manage or happen to touch the bare conductors, I'm sorry for you. For low voltages, people are burnt. For medium voltages, people are hospitalized. For high voltages, lucky to be alive. For extra high voltages, sorry, that person cannot be alive. No chance. I've seen a guy accidentally touch MV cable, 66 kV. No, sorry, this is not 6, this is 11 kV, sorry, not 66. He touched 11 kV with a digger while he was digging, and he became paralyzed. It had to take 6 minutes of resuscitation to get him back, and he didn't remember anything after that. But this is how bad electricity is. This is medium voltage. So when it goes to higher voltages, there's no chance. There's no need for anyone to take. Johnson has mentioned it very clearly. I would always tell people, take your time and do a good job and go back home in one piece. Otherwise, you have to suffer and your family have to suffer the repercussions of your actions or inactions. And someone has to come to the hospital to visit you. And if you have time after recovery, you have a job. And then if you are in one piece, because most of the time, when you see a major accident involving electricity, that guy never fully recovers. He has something that has left him feeling permanently disabled or partially permanently disabled. And who is going to hire someone like that? So it's not worth it, really. So this is just what I want to add to this entire story. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Valentine. Thank you for always adding your voice to the caution, because electricity is something that when the accident happens, there is no second chance. There is no means of correcting it. So whatever you are doing is a reactive measure, and something has happened. So this is what, apart from monitoring and inspection, another tool that we have as health and safety professionals is communication, briefings. So we should not hesitate in any single opportunity we have to brief them, communicate to them, because maybe it's that the topic or what you talk to them about on that day is what will save their life. So do not get tired of always talking. Even when you feel that what you are talking is not yielding fruit, or it's not effective, just whenever you have the opportunity, conduct briefing, conduct toolbox talk. It's entering, and you never can tell where they will use that knowledge. So communication and awareness is very, very important, because some of them think that is just normal talk, or it's normal toolbox talk, but the information is getting in. So when they will need it, they will need it. So let's not get discouraged in continuous communication and awareness.
Yes, to just add little honey to what Mr. Johnson and Valentine have said so far. We are all professionals, and I believe we know the implication or risk when it comes to the effect, of electrical issues. It's as dangerous. Mr. Valentine has given us some insights, some examples of, these are life examples that he has probably witnessed with some colleagues and stuff like that. And for me, these are really, really touching, because when you look at electrical issues, the risks that emerge from maybe poor care of all those stuff, it tends to I tend to look at it as something that is more hazardous, like a confined space activity and all that, if not more than. And to an extent, some site, they might be so ignorant, and some people might not really want to pay more attention into it. These are the things we face most of the time as an health and safety practitioner, because I would just want to emphasize on competency, because sometimes at some point, when I began to advocate for some certain level, I was even telling some people that, in fact, it should be a requirement that a project manager, okay, a project manager should be having a qualification, maybe a strong health and safety qualification, maybe like even a Bosch. Because the truth is that, apart from competency, we also try to look at the culture of an organization. Because when for some of us who might have gone through with our experience in Qatar and some other country, we find out that as we begin to change jobs, sometimes we find ourselves in some organization that is so challenging that even the culture, when the culture is zero, you begin to you face challenges of this electrical safety issues, so many issues that you have to begin to manage as an electrical safety practitioner. Just like as Mr. Johnson have said, we'll just keep trying our way to communicate, the hazard and risk that is associated with such electrical activity. And we'll keep continue to give instructions. We continue to communicate the procedures, regarding all this kind of activity, and let the people know. And in most times, if we're opportune, we need to begin to, when we do toolbox talk, I know sometimes we don't have that opportunity when it comes to construction. But when you're dealing with facility workers, maybe you have some place to do your toolbox talk where you use a projector, probably you prepare some slide, you show them some videos, some images. Even at some point, if I'm talking to some workers, I might just bring my phone where I have some downloaded videos that has to do with confined space, hazard and risks, and what can happen even when it comes to electrical. Even if I gather with them, I talk to them, I just show them the videos, I show them all those things. So sometimes, even when you look at the competency of these workers, they are not like probably well educated. So you will not compare their level of competency with some of us who are like a safety practitioner, because when you look back at our background, our foundational background, you discover that most of us are probably university graduates. Some of us even have master's degree, so our level of education and level of competency is very high as compared to such kind of people. So we must continue to talk. We must continue to preach in any way we want to call it. We are advocating for safe working environment, for safety on site. For me, I just feel that is our main primary responsibility, and we'll just keep on trying our best to make sure that we have a safe working environment for all. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Stephen. Thank you for lending your voice as usual. It's really not something that we are giving up soon. It's something that will continue to lend our voice. We are not going to stop anytime soon. So wherever we get the opportunity to speak, part of your core responsibility as health and safety professional is advocacy. Apart from advocacy, you enlighten people. So some of them, if you are working in construction industry or in a temporary industry or temporary finish area, you see that most of them rely more on the information you give to them. So they value what you say. That is why when they want to do something, they come and ask you, safety, is this one okay? Because they believe that you should know better, or they believe that you know better. So in order to ensure that you give accurate information, you should be up to date with that information. You should ensure that you read the safe system of work that they are using. Don't think that the safe system of work belongs to only the execution team or to the construction team. No, you have to read it as well. You need to understand exactly what they are doing. And if there is a recommendation or if there is an advice, so you can give based on what you understood from the document you read. So we'll keep communicating and we'll keep advocating for safe workplace. That is our duty, even if it's not yielding fruit, even if you feel overwhelmed, but you have to do it because you are there to save life. And you never can tell, maybe the one you will refuse to say is the one that will cause accident. So the one that you said is the one that averted the accident. So you cannot start looking for a record of accidents that you averted. No, you can't have that record. The only record you have are the ones that you didn't avert. So that means you have more of the averted incidents. Because you are not keeping record of them, that means you have more. So that is part of the encouragement that we should have. That if we recorded 5 incidents, that means you averted more than 50. Because you are not recording it somewhere doesn't mean that you are not yielding fruit. So that is a motivation from our own side, because it looks overwhelming sometimes that you give instruction or you give recommendations, and instead of them to take action, they will sideline you. They will not even call you again. You will not even be aware that the activity you suspended has been started. So it can look overwhelming, but we don't need to give up. We'll keep trying our best. Okay, that is it from me. Do we have any other contribution? Or we'll call it a day. Okay, I'm looking at having a session for open book exam, Nebosh open book exam candidates. So we've had like 2 or 3 sessions in the past. So I feel like we should one of these weeks before the next exam, we should arrange a session, and we can inform some of the training centers to direct their candidates to participate in that session so that they will understand exactly what NEBOSH requires from them on that exam, and avoid wasting time and wasting energy and ends up failing the exam. So that is one of the things we can contribute to the upcoming professionals.
That would be highly appreciated.
Yes, that's what we have been doing, and we'll continue to do that, because we need to continue to encourage young people who are also coming into the profession. Because some of us will be going on retirement. So we need the young ones to take over. So we have to encourage them based on our level of experience and what we have passed through as well. Just like I've said, we've done it before. So I think we should try to focus on the young professionals so that at least they will begin to learn a lot as well as we progress. Thank you.
Yes, we'll work towards that before the next OBE exam. So we'll have a session. Okay, we'll call it a day.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for coming, Mr. Sunday, Aga Valentine, and Amajede. Thanks for coming.
You're most welcome. And thank you, Stephen, for joining as well.
Yes, Mr. Valentine. We are supposed to see you. You are a very busy man. Oh. Just give me dates now. Let me come and pay you visit. Let's just have some time.